We are back, episode 24. It is Coach Darius D. Brown. And yeah, man, this is the last episode of 2025. Listen, for all of our supporters, we thank you for supporting us since day one. For those that have shared our content, shared our episodes with their family, with their friends, from the bottom of our hearts, we truly appreciate each and every one of you guys from the state of Georgia, from the East Coast to the West Coast, even out of the country. You guys have sent emails, you have poured your gratitude, so that does not go unnoticed. So thank you. For those that do not follow us, make sure that you like, subscribe, share with at least 5 to 10 people so we can continue to push the envelope and change more lives. So without further ado, we have a special guest uh, actually, he's tuning in from Las Vegas, guys. Las Vegas, Nevada, to be exact. Who has been to Las Vegas? I know I've been to Las Vegas. Las Vegas is like my second home.
Hmm.
Uh, and I don't gamble, by the way, but I just love being out there. I love the weather, right? And I love this guy and I love his family. And just to give you guys a little bit of how we met, this was back in 2021. Took my wife to the beautiful country of Jamaica and met him and his beautiful wife, Linda. And, I've been under his mentorship. We don't talk often, but when we do talk, he's always pouring into me by nature, right? There's no motives. There's no agenda. He's just, this is what he does. So, he's going to give you guys his background story. He's going to, share with you guys exactly who he is and what he's done over the years to not only, pour into my life, but so many other people's lives. So without further ado, we have Mr. Dean Wallace. How you doing, sir?
Very good. Thank you, Dee. I'm honored to be recognized by you and Joe and being on this show. I've watched your business grow in leaps and bounds over several years, and I'm amazed at what you guys have done. I'm not surprised, though.
For sure. We appreciate that. We appreciate that. So, like, share with us, man. Share with our viewers, our supporters, exactly who Dean Wallace is and give us a little bit of your background story.
Well, I'm just a few days ago, a 79-year-old retired man that grew up in a very humble, small, probably 900 my they dealt to them in their life they had to deal with. And so other than keeping us safe in the home, um, we had a place to sleep, a place to eat, and a place to go to school from and return. And that was good. And in a way, it was fortunate for me because I say that's kind of a blank slate. In other words, I seemed to keep myself out of trouble. I enjoyed school. So I left and came home every day and liked getting good grades because I was competitive apparently by nature. And but other than that, my parents didn't have lots of expectations for me or put pressure on me um, to do anything. So they supported, at least, you know, psychologically in the home, my involvement in sports or school or whatever, but they didn't really have a lot of guardrails up for me. So that actually is a blessing in my life that I was kept safe, that I had two parents and I had a brother 4 years older, but I could literally do whatever it is I wanted to do without any borders. And that gave me a chance to be exploratory, visionary, entrepreneurial, even at age 7 and on up. That's kind of how my life started. And um, the book writes and tells about how it evolved from there. And it's truly an amazing thing to think back at, and all in one bundle when I started writing the book. Because I learned a lot and reminded myself about a lot of things about who I am is who I was then. And I was very fortunate, and I'm still very fortunate, especially people like you and Joe.
That's powerful. Super powerful. And you mentioned, having an older brother, 4 years older than you, and then, your mom and dad have, doing the best that they could. What what was the pivotal point? Well, let me start by asking you this. When was that moment when you said, whether it was a teenager, preteen, when you say, you know what, I want to pursue baseball? Why, out of all sports, why was it baseball for you?
Mhm. Well, when we moved from my grandma and grandfather's home, on 37th and Division, and basically just outside of downtown Portland, that's when my parents bought their first home, and it was very small, and I think it was something like $5,800. I mean that, and back then you could even buy a home in Montgomery and Ward's catalog. They would ship the package, and then you would have somebody put it together, a real house. So anyway, that's back in day and age when homes were pretty affordable. Anyway, we moved out to that house off of 122nd in Southeast Portland. I was, I must have been about age 5. And so at that point, we had a backyard and a front yard, but I remember my dad saying, come on, let's go play catch. And I had an old black baseball glove that was my grandfather's. It looks like something Ty Cobb probably had. And it's a black thing. It looks like a catcher's mitt. And there's one little spot in there, and you couldn't catch the ball if it didn't hit that spot, which meant your job was to put it where the ball's going. And that's hand-eye. So I remember playing catch out in the backyard with my dad. And then my brother kind of got involved in playing catch. He was 4 years older. So that's how I remember starting with baseball. And from that point on, the things I did to cultivate that sport into my blood, any sport, didn't matter, was the season. Baseball, basketball, football, baseball. I played all the sports, which what most kids could do back then because they didn't have these team sports where you had to kind of commit to be one sport or you kind of got left out of the others. Like my grandson, he played ice hockey till he's age 21, played with San Jose Sharks travel team and over in Sweden in the Swedish league where he's a dual citizen. And he never got to play the other sports really. And I think he would have been a great all-around athlete, but that's the day and age we live in. So I got started back then. And then a lot of times I didn't have kids around the neighborhood to play catch with. I'm the one that kind of got them all started because I was basically the oldest kid by a year or so than my next door neighbor and other kids that lived there. So I kind of got to be the leader by age and by, I guess, physical talent. Not that I was big or anything, but that's how I got in that position. And if I couldn't find someone to play catch with, I created my own games. Like we had 3 concrete steps that went up to the front door. And so I would stand out in front about 15 feet back and throw the baseball, a rubber coated baseball, at the steps and it would bounce back. Now they have a rebounder thing. But that was who my catcher was. I'd throw it the steps and it bounced back. I'd throw it steps and bounce back. If I didn't hit it accurately, it went somewhere over to the side. And I'd have to go get it. So that was an incentive not to do that. So I got better. Or I'd stand on the very edge of our house and I'd throw the ball up the roof just enough to get it to go over. And as soon as I could see it was going to go over, I would sprint around the house and get over there just in time to see if I could dive and catch it before it hit the ground. Otherwise, I made myself do a couple push-ups or something. So that got to be an art, throwing it up there and running around there and diving and catching. And, kind of it's like the bottom of the ninth. If you don't catch that, they win the game. If you catch it, you win. So I always invented games like that. And so the more I played that, the more I was interested in being on a team. But of course, you had to be a 4th grader then. And in grade school, one of the girls that wrote a foreword on my book, she was in my classroom in the 4th grade and several classrooms through grade school. And she went to the same high school. She said she remembers the first day of school in the 4th grade. And the teacher said, I want everyone to stand up, look at the class, say your name and what you want to be when you grow up. So when it got to me, she said, everyone's looking at me. I stand up, say, my name is Dean Wallace, and I'm going to be a professional baseball player. And everyone looked at me like, how could you be a professional baseball player? Those guys play on TV and, kids don't think forward 20 years. So anyway, that's what I said. And in her testimony, she says, that's the first time I remember Dean Wallace. He said he was going to be a professional baseball player. Most kids said they're going to be a fireman or something, and most kids weren't a fireman. But he was a professional baseball player. So she said it stuck in my memory all these years. And so that's how I got going. The more I played, the more I wanted to be. And that got to the one of the main lessons in my book. You never know who's watching. And in the fifth grade, when I was on a team, I started out being a catcher because I wanted to wear all that catcher's gear. So that was why I wanted to be a catcher. And I could catch, I knew that. And I wasn't afraid of the ball. But after the first game, second game, I guess, the coach, Mr. Taylor, Harold Taylor, said, Dean, you're going to be a pitcher. I said, well, what about I want to be a catcher? He says, yeah, but you throw the ball back to the pitcher harder than he throws it to the plate. So you're going to be a pitcher and you can catch when you're not pitching. I said, okay. So that's how I started being a pitcher. And a pitcher, of course, you're kind of the center of the field, the center of attention in the younger years. If you can throw strikes, most of the kids are not going to hit the ball until you get to be like fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh. And I could throw strikes. And also I was telling kids in the field where to move, like second baseman, because he's swinging late, it's going to hit it to right field. If he hits it all, move that way. And then back up or come in. And so this umpire was watching me. I didn't know him. He didn't know who I was, but he told me later, he says, I was thinking, this kid ought to be the coach. He's telling everyone where to play, and it's where they should be playing then. And he's throwing strikes, and he's so competitive, and he's batting third, and he hits the ball, but he should be a coach of the team. And he watched me for 15 years through grade school, through high school, through college. He knew I signed this contract with the Giants. And then later on, when I was through playing ball, he had kept track of me that he knew I'd gotten a bachelor's and a master's degree with counseling certification. And he had a job open up in the school where we went to school, the David Douglas High School District. So I get this call one morning and he says, Dean, this is Al Ross. And he says, do you know who I am? I said, no. He says, well, I know who you are. And he says, I'm principal and I have a job I'd like to offer you. He knew I was teaching in the Portland School District. So he said, I was wondering if you would drop by the school tomorrow and I'll buy a cup of coffee. I want to talk to you about it. I said, well, sure. I'm heading out to my mom's anyway. So I dropped by the next morning and he introduced himself. He says, you remember when you played for the West Powers Pygmies? I said, yeah. We had jeans and a t-shirt and the other teams have these fancy uniforms. He says, yeah, that's right. He says, it didn't matter how fancy the uniforms were. You seemed to win. And
Wow. Are you still with us?
we never talked. And I said, and now I'm 22. That was like over a period of 12, 13 years. He says, yeah. And so he said, basically, I'm offering this job. It was to be a full-time counselor in this very good middle school and to be a coach each season if I wanted to be. And of course I did. So I accepted the job. The point is, I had no idea this man was watching me, who I was, how I did things, what my attitude seemed to be at age 10. And then here he is offering me a job at age 12. And it turned out 10 years later, he literally opened the door for me to take the job I moved to. And that's how my whole life started. So that's that pivotal moment you're talking is, how did this sports and baseball lead you to business? And where was the pivotal moment? It was Mr. Ross offering me a job that was very good. And it took me to the athletic club industry. His brother-in-law was an owner of a team or the club in the Salem area. And so that's how I got there. So the lesson is you never know who's watching you. You never know who's watching you, Dee. Somebody might see a podcast of yours and see you at a store and say, that's that guy in the podcast. And comes over and say, hey, I got something for you. You might not be interested, but could I give you the spiel? And you say, yeah, sure. And he says, who knows? Who knows where that leads? And I didn't even take the job the first time they offered it to me. 2 years later, they came back and I took that job in Salem. And that's why I got into the athletic club business. But you never know who's watching you.
That's so good. That's so good. It trips me out as far as a kid, you you finding whatever that works for you to play baseball in your front yard. And now, like, even with basketball, like, you put up the shots and then they have like the retractor with like the I call it like a robot rebounder where it throws the ball back at you, so you don't actually have to have
Right.
a human being. So for you to like improvise at that time during that that point of your life as a kid is just it speaks volumes. But yes, let's get into the book. So you just released your first published book, From Baseball to Business: A Legacy of Leadership. And you talked about this gentleman knowing you as a 10-year-old, watching you. You didn't know him from Adam. Years later, you guys, cross paths again, like full circle moment, and he offers you a job. Like he saw something in Dean, maybe that Dean didn't see in himself. Like, number one, let me ask you, how did you feel in that moment of this gentleman reaching back out to you and giving you your accolades and telling you exactly what he saw in you and what made you, go from baseball and get into the business realm of business?
Well, I think the first thing that it dawned on me after the conversation, because I guess I was more intrigued with, how's this guy remember some kid pitching in the fifth, sixth, seventh grade, and then offers him a job 14 years later or whatever it was. Then we never had a conversation. But that's how closely he had followed me. And he had kept track, newspaper clippings when I played at Portland State University, games I pitched, signing a contract, followed me statistically in the paper and pro ball. And so I was kind of taken back by that, but I thought, well, he must really believe in me. He must like what he saw. And I got to think, well, what did he see? And when I think back to what all the people I've hired, I never interviewed anybody, but I was a part of 95% of all final decisions. But I didn't interview. I had conversations for maybe 5 minutes before we finally hired somebody. And then that department leader would offer them the job and take it from there. But I would ask people to say, give me 3 singular words that describe to me what you believe are your 3 strongest qualities. And so I thought, well, if I was interviewing myself, what would I say would be my 3 strongest qualities? And they're not just suddenly my 3 strongest qualities. There must be things I started working at as a kid. And they were like, I was always punctual. That's a good trait to have. I was always organized. I remember the night before tomorrow's game, I had my shoes out. I had my socks on top. I had my pants next, my belt next, my shirt, my hat, my glove. I had it all ready at the end of the bed. And hopefully it wasn't raining so I could get up when it's time and put that uniform on and go play. Very organized. I was very attentive, curiously, because I wanted to be the best. So I thought I'd better listen to everything. And so I just think between determination, organization, punctuality, discipline, the discipline to play ball, practice ball, drills on my own, not when a team's doing it, that just gets you in the door. It's what you do after that that adds layers of frosting to the cake. And that's where people cut themselves out. Some kids want that experience as a 5th grader, and they don't like it because they got hit or something, and they drop out. Other kids don't mind that. Then as a 7th grader, they don't like it because they're not starting. And then as a high school player, they lost interest because they didn't make the cut. And then as a college player, most kids have left baseball that started by then because they didn't get a college scholarship. So where do you play after high school? If you did, there's really no opportunity. You could go play sandlot ball or something. So you get to make those next steps based on the investment you made in yourself and your passion for whatever it is you're doing, being an economics person, being a salesman, being a ball player. And so those are the things I think he saw in me. And then that's what I realized. So as I started thinking about why did he hire me? Because I have these things. How did I get those things? Because I did those things. Who we are today were then. And basically, that's a theory that I watched a movie on years ago. And it really says that between the ages of 9 and 11, we start getting shaped by our environment, by the people in the environment, by our parents, by the things we do, and by the way we approach things. So our brain is starting to get mapped, programmed, groomed. And at 11 and at 14 and at 17 and at 20 and at 22, which is about the end, maybe even a little bit before that, depending on how, sophisticated, intellectual, intelligent the people are, they're through being programmed. So what is really important between the ages, say 9 and 20, that kids develop the right foundational traits, that they learn how to do things maybe more so than others and go at it harder, because that's what is going to cut them out for life. And it's a sad thing if they don't do that, because that's when they're programmed. And so how do we expect kids or people to be different as adults when that's what they were doing as a kid. You know, you get patterned. It's like if you get a brand new dog, you better kind of train them in certain things right off the bat, or they're always going to be out of control. And you wonder why the dog's chewing up the couch. So that's what I would say.
That's good. That's so good. Now you wear many hats, right? Coach, player, mentor, now an author, right? Um, what was that, in what season of Dean's life taught you the most valuable lesson regarding leadership?
Well, I think it actually started when I was younger because maybe being maybe the oldest kid in the neighborhood by a year and by being interested in sports. And when you play sports, you kind of have to have other people to play the game with you. So I got kids interested in that. Not that they wouldn't have been, but I was kind of the leader in getting kids together to play. Hey, let's play Sunday morning up at the basketball shed, 4-on-4. So I'd call Roger and Ronnie and Mike and Richard and, Troy and Steve and Bruce. And we go out there and play on Saturday and Sunday morning, even if it was raining because there was a shed over it. So I was the one that always made the calls, kind of like the Sandlot movie guy. And this is an example of a stopwatch I bought when I was 12. I raised the money. It cost $6.75. Bought it at Ron Wright Jeweler. And what I bought that for is because I wanted to make some money. And the way I could make money is if I could hold track meet. So we had a big enough backyard that I had 2 units of sawdust that cost $5 delivered. And we made it into a pole vault pit, which you could also hide up into. And then we put a deal in the ground and made it so we could put a pole in it. Went down to the lumber yard and bought some wood dowels, which were pretty good, but they weren't safe actually. And we'd tape them up. And then we learned how to go over 3 foot and 5 foot. And one money off of that, and then we get a shot put around rock and paint it black, or a flat rock and use the discus, and just all this entrepreneurial visionary thing. So I was leading in that way then. And then when I got to the high school years, I was often the captain. And then when I got to college, I wouldn't say I was a leader of anything at that time. I was a leader of myself, but I fit into a college baseball program. And I'd say the coach takes over. So there's not much to lead. You just do what you're told and do it well if you can. When I got to my first year in professional ball, because of the program I had gone through and the things I had done personally, like the long game and the immaculate inning, I got to Boise. I flew in to join up with the Giants there and meet the coach. And then when we got home to the Pioneer League in Great Falls, Montana, we were having practices. We always practiced 10 in the morning and a game that evening. Pretty much only 3 days off the whole baseball season. And after the second practice, the coach came. He came. Hey, Dean. He says, "You got all this stuff down. Fundamentally, you're perfect. You've got all the drills down. I know the program you came from. You're known for that kind of stuff in that program." And he says, "I'm having a hard time coaching all these professional players at the level I need to, with infield, outfield drills, batting practice. And then we got pitchers. There's 10 of you." And he says, "You're by far the most technically advanced and someone I believe could do it." So he asked me if I would be the player pitching coach for my first professional team. And I said, sure. And there's even a letter in this book. There's even a letter in there from him. It says how his first year, how much I did and how much he hoped there was always a position for me in the organization. So I ended up being a leader of that pitching staff at that point. As one of the peers in that group, I was the one that ran all the drills. I was the one, next thing I know, these kids that are 22 even, and then some were just graduated from high school, and like the number one pick in the draft that year, Mike Phillips, he was my roommate. He was only 18, but his parents asked the coach, they said, "Hey, we don't want him on his own. He's just a kid. He's a great baseball player." So I ended up being his roommate on the road, and we shared an apartment. So I became a leader that year. Actually, in college too, my sophomore year, going into my sophomore year, I had a work-study program. The coach said, your summer job's going to be going to Jesuit high school. You're going to be the head baseball coach for the American Legion program. And I was only 20 then, and some of these kids were 18, 17, and 18. And so that was a chance. I did lead that team. I coached it. So I don't think it was a leader. I was a coach. And that was a leadership for sure. But then at the Giants, that was an, and then of course, when I became a teacher, I was leading classes. I was leading activities. And when I got to Floyd Light, I was doing a lot of leading. And of course, that took me into business where I was definitely a leader for the next 30 years. So those are the spots. The one chance in college to coach that I was assigned, I didn't go looking for it. And then the chance of the Giants, which was really a good experience. And it was neat to see how these other professional players accepted me. They were asking me like, well, how do you throw that slider? Can you, so I'd be working with them on techniques, and they're already professional, but most kids don't get much very good pitching coaching when they're playing little sports in high school, maybe in college. But I never had a coach from all the time I played that had ever pitched. High school, little league, college, even my college coach hadn't pitched. We did have a pitching coach that came in, I think, the last few years, but he had pitched, and he was a really good guy. But just because you can pitch doesn't mean you can coach. And they found that a lot with a lot of great major league players. They retire and they put them as a hitting coach, and they don't last a year or two because, like Mickey Mantle with the Yankees, he said, well, you just do this. Well, he does that, but how do you do it? You need more technical. So that's where I got my first two chances. And then when I was in education, when I went into business, I was definitely a leader. And I took everything I'd learned in sports and a little bit in my college education. I never took a business course in my life, but I knew how to add and subtract. And that's pretty important. How much is in the checkbook? How much is going to go out? And so I found it easy because of my sports background, from baseball to business.
Good. That's good. So what was the spark that made Dean write from baseball to business?
Well, for several years, my grandkids would say, "Oh, Grandpa, you should write that down. You should write it in a book or something." And my grandson, especially because my granddaughters are 13 and 15, and my grandson's 25 now, and he's a senior at University of Colorado, graduating in wealth management. He said, "Grandpa, you really need to write a book. You've got a lot of different things you've done, and you have a really good story to tell." And I finally decided about 8 months ago, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit down at this computer, and I'm going to type up things about my life and being married to my wife, for 57 years. We've been together for 63. Met as she was a freshman in high school when we met. I was a sophomore. And I finally decided I was going to do it. So I was going to type up, probably in my mind, I was going to type up 20, 25 pages of stuff. And I'm going to take it down to Walgreens and take 7 or 8 pictures and have them put together, a book, and then put a cover on it. And that was going to be my book, because I did that once for the kids at the different houses that we'd had, so that they'd have a history where they live and what the house looked like and stuff like that. So that's what I decided I was going to do about 8 months ago because of the grandkids. And Linda said, you should do that. They're right. And so I went a step further because I started seeing all this stuff on TV about, you can write a book, call Covenant House, and we'll show you how, send in for your free guide. So I did make a couple calls and get some ideas. And I thought, well, I'm going to call this one company Canadian Ghostwriters, because it sounded interesting. And so I called them, and they said, well, what we do is we help you get started, and then we proofread stuff, shine it up a little, and then we'll make sure it gets published, if you end up finishing it. And I said, okay. So I decided to let them do it. And they wanted me to sign a proposal. And I said, no, I'm not going to sign any agreement, because I said, I don't know who you guys are. When you sign with these companies, you don't even know if they're in the United States or Canada. It said Canadian. But I know a guy wrote a book, and he had it printed out. It wasn't a very big one. And he said, they're really good. I said, well, where? He says, oh, they're on the East Coast somewhere. Turned out, I called them to see, and they're in Jamaica. And there's nothing wrong with that. But most of these companies anymore they might be here with a physical presence, but they're doing offshore stuff because it's less expensive to print a book. So anyway, I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And if it's not good enough for you, then we won't be doing business together. I'm just going to throw this out. Maybe it'll be something different, but I'm going to write 16 chapters, and there will be 4 chapters to this season of my life, this season, and the current season. And in that chapter, there'll be 4 chapters, and it'll be about a part of that season. and then we'll get through to the next season. That'll be the next 4 chapters and the next 4. And so they said, okay, well, that sounds fine. And I said, and in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take chapter 1, covers these years, and I'm going to write out like 7 or 8 points, and I'm just sit down and type it out and see what happens. And when I would do that, it seemed to come to about, I don't know, 20 pages typed. And so when they lay it out in format in a book like this, it's they get different size pages, but it's pretty full. So I did that, and I said, every time I get 4 chapters done, I'll send it to you to proofread. And when you proofread, make corrections or suggestions and send it back, I'll note those, and then that'll be considered complete or unofficially complete, and I'll send you $1,000. And every time we do 4 chapters, I'll send you 1,000. So that's what it ended up costing me. But they did. They worked wonderfully. But because I didn't want to sign an agreement with people I don't know for that kind of money. I did want the help, and I did want it to come out. So as I got into the book, I thought, yeah, this is going to be a real book. And it is. It's about 330 pages. It's got about 30 pictures. Because if I had something that I wanted to talk about and said I did, like the stopwatch and why I bought it and how I got it. There's a picture of that in there. There's a picture of my baseball game in it. This is the only baseball game I had. I don't know where that's going.
Can't really see it due to the background.
It says, I convinced kids we're going to do all these things, and I need to have equipment that you're going to. So if they won, they got to play the next person. It was 25 cents. So they'd come over and play to play on this game. And if they won, then they got to play the next person. So I'd make 25 cents and would add up. And then I'd buy a watch, and then they get to have a nice watch. Or we built a wiffle ball cage with chicken wire. And so I was earning money then and providing opportunities. So that's kind of how it all started. And that's how I decided to write this book. And when I finished this book, I thought, that really is a book. That's a real book. And I've had people that have read it now. Our portfolio manager's wife said, Dean, she says, I think it's a love story. She says, but it's athletics, it's running business, it's talking about family life, but it's really a love story that winds you and your wife through the entire journey, because she was there through the entire journey. And Ronnie, my portfolio manager, her husband, said, it's everything. It's a business book, how to run a business, how to lead a team, how to make a family work, how to keep a relationship together. He says it's everything in there. And Ensign Inouye, who's a world pride champion, he trains as Navy SEALs in the Pacific Fleet. He lives in Japan, and he's one of my testimonies in here. He's already read it. So, and they say the same thing. So I think it's something for everybody, and I'm very proud of the finished product.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Mine is in transit, and based off what you're saying, it sounds like gumbo. You ever had gumbo?
Yes, I love it.
Different ingredients, but everything comes combined together so beautifully. And that's what it just based off of, some of the context that you provided in the book. It just from life, business, sports, parenthood. That's essential, because I feel like me being a dad of 2 beautiful children, being a husband, fatherhood, I feel like there's no manual script to parenthood. You learn as you go. You go through these ebbs and flows throughout life, and you learn. And then also, you learn from like your counterparts, like friendships that are, friends that are parents, and you look and you observe and you see what they're doing, and you kind of extract different things to say, let me implement that, So I think that's powerful. Now, from baseball to business, it says a lot. Like when I hear from baseball to business, right? Me playing sports as well, and me being a businessman now, and extracting things that I learned from the game of basketball and now implementing it into my businesses. When I hear from baseball to business, it's a lot. What parallels can you explain that you took from the field into leadership and business?
Well, two things stand out in my mind because one of them, something comes up every day and I think, well, I couldn't have done that if I hadn't pitched that game. Um, I think you know that I recently, while writing this book, was recognized as a world, I can't see it on the screen. Well, I guess there it is. As a world title. I have a world record by the Book of World Records has certified me, and I have a diploma and all that, for having pitched the longest NCAA completed baseball game by one person, me, 17 innings, 4.5 hours, 245 pitches, and in the bottom of 17th with 2 outs, I singled in the winning run. We won 3-2. All that happened in 4.5 hours, and I was the pitcher and the walk-off game winner. Now, that's a lesson that came from sports that was sure determination and patience. And I often wonder, well, how long would it have gone had I not got that single? If I hadn't got single and I was out, I would have gone out and pitched in the 18th inning. How long would it have gone on? I kind of wish I would know what my limit would have been if I could have pitched 19 or 20. I think I could have. I wasn't tired. I was pumped up. I had a lot of adrenaline going, but I was very focused. When I would come off the field from about the 9th inning on, I would get my slicker on, and if I was going to be at bat, I'd go to the on-deck circle, and then I'd go to the plate. But if I was going to be at bat, I would just get my slicker on and go out and coach first. I didn't want to be in the dugout with guys talking and saying, how are you feeling? And stuff like that. I didn't want anything planted in my mind. I just wanted to be focused on what I was doing. So I would stay clear of the coach and the players as much as I could. And that's that focus, like I said to you earlier, the vision of the leader is, or the focus of the eye of the leader is the vision of the pack. And I had an eye that I wanted to win that game, and I didn't want anything distracting me. So one, that game was a pivotal thing that I've taken from the field into my life. Patience, determination, and a victor's attitude, not a victim. Because what would I have thought if we lost? Well, if he hadn't dropped the ball, blah, blah, blah. No, I was focused on one thing, getting the next batter out, and when I was up the plate, getting a hit and getting this thing over. So that's one thing. And I think that's an important thing in life. Never give up. Be determined, stay focused. Don't let people talk you out of something that you know isn't right or doesn't. Pressure. Like in the book, it talks about a known flood coming, a 100-year flood to one of my clubs. It's in the book. Well, how do you handle pressure? Well, because you practice and practice and practice. And in my senior year in college, we were playing for the Northwest College Championship for the right to go to Southern California to play, to maybe get into the College World Series. I was not starting the final game because I pitched previously. And so we got to the final game, winner take all, loser go home. And our pitcher, Roger Gates, was pitching, and it was 2-1 in the bottom of the 9th inning. They were the visiting team on a coin toss. And Roger had done obviously very well. 2-1, we're ahead, but we got the bottom of the 9th. We got to get 3 outs. And so he gets out there and pitches, and next thing you know, they got the bases loaded, no outs, 2 balls, no strikes on the batter. The coach calls timeout, goes out, and brings me in from the bullpen. Now we're talking about pressure. This is for a trip to Southern California. I'm brought in, Multnomah Stadium in downtown Portland. It's 30 feet to the backstop. Anything that gets by my catcher, it's going to be a tie game. They got the meat of their order up, second batter, third batter, and fourth batter. Just who you'd want up to plate in a situation where you got the bases loaded and you need one more run. What could go wrong, really? Well, I came in, I took my warm-ups, and my catcher comes out, Tom Troublehorn, who eventually later became Major League Manager of the Year twice with the Cubs, once with the Brewers. He comes out and he gives me all the signals: fastball, slider, curveball, changeup, screwball, blah, blah, blah. I go, no. He said, what do you mean no? I said, I'm not throwing anything but a fastball. I said, I only get 2 mistakes and it's a tie game. How would you like to come in and throw your first pitch and break that ice? Now I'm ready to go in one pitch with all that pressure. He said, well, you can't do that. I said, Tom, you can give me all the signals you want. It's going to be a fastball. You can count on it. So he goes back and he's giving me signals. And I throw the first one right down the middle. I would say it was in the mid 90s, strike one. So 8 pitches later, I'd thrown 9 straight fastballs and had 3 straight strikeouts, period. Not a ground out, 3 straight strikeouts. And in baseball, and I didn't know this till a few years ago, that's called an immaculate inning. They say it's harder to get than a no-hitter because you got to basically get three straight strikeouts. That's tough to do, and especially with 2, 3, 4 in that situation. And I couldn't throw one in the dirt or have a curveball get him away from him or something. It's me a tough. What? I can't say, well, he told me to do this. And when you can learn to do that, which was all those years I was throwing a ball against the wall and no one else to catch, hundreds of times with little chalk drawings on the wall, this 2 and 2, you got to hit that thing or they're going to hit a home run, you lose the game, and then you have to run a lap. Just me by myself over at the schoolyard. That's pressure. And I practice all those things that apply to sports because where else can you practice and what for as a kid? And that was it. So I had real life experiences on the ball field that came over to life. So when things came up in my life, with my determination and patience and the ability to handle pressure, I was more confident that I could do it than feeling like I couldn't. And, sometimes you don't do it, but I'd rather have that background from the baseball field than none at all.
So good. So good. That's so good. What's one leadership principle in your book that you think every young entrepreneur or young athlete should master?
Well, to me, that's easy. It's something I developed at the club, and I actually used it just yesterday. We were out buying some furniture. We have had this very nice girl helping us. She even came in yesterday on our day off to meet with us about the furniture order. And the manager, this is a great big regional Ashley furniture store in Las Vegas. He was brought there special because it's a huge store and he's a great leader. So anyway, he even came over and said, you guys must be special because this is her day off and she's a full-time college student too. And she came in and she's just fantastic. So if you have any questions, you can sure ask me if something, but she's the one. And so afterwards, to get to your question, it's called recognize, reward, and celebrate. I did this back with employees. I found out if you go out and talk to your pitcher and you're more positive, instead of suggesting, you better be careful here now. You recognize the situation, you reward the person. And so yesterday when we got ready to leave, I asked the manager to come over. He said, how you through it? I said, yeah, we'll be back next week to continue. He said, well, did you want to talk to me about it? I said, yeah, I do. I said, Maria is really good. And I know because you told us that. But I think you exercise a very important point that I believed in all my years. And I did it with teams I coach. I look for an opportunity when somebody does something good, a player or this business associate of his, to recognize them publicly or other people and say, wow, that's neat, Maria. And then to reward them and celebrate it somehow. Rewarding is if I give them a compliment in public. Celebrating is where maybe you give them a $10 Starbucks card or who knows what. But that's the most important principle. There's so many in running a business, but that's one I used just yesterday, and I talk about it all the time. And I always recognize good service and tell the person and try to look for a manager. I want to report it to a higher authority so they know, and it's genuine. It's just on the moment's notice. So recognize, reward, and celebrate the good things your employees do or your team members.
So good. So good. I hope you guys are taking copious notes because I know I am. Definitely going to be implementing this.
And Dee, that was one of the important comments that Dr. Ken Blanchard, he's written probably 20 or 30 business books. And I had a chance to work on a manuscript committee with him, his wife, Marjorie Blanchard, and Dee Eddington from the University of Michigan. He wrote the book, 1 Minute Manager Gets Fit. And it's about his travel. And I got to read a manuscript. And then 9 people were invited to meet in Chicago for 2 days. and sit down with the Blanchards and Dr. Eddington and talk about the book and things we thought or suggestions we'd make, having been in the athletic club industry. But in his book, The 1 Minute Manager, I think it's the first one he ever wrote, very simple book, but very simple things. He said, positive feedback is the breakfast of champions. So go around and catch your people doing good things and then give them that positive feedback, because it's a breakfast of champions.
So good. Listen, guys. So we're going to make sure we have the description to Dean's, the link inside of the description below. Once this episode airs, we'll have the link to purchase the book. Please, guys, make sure you guys purchase it, share it with someone. You don't have to be in sports. Maybe you never played sports, but you are looking, you feel stuck, you feel like you are ready to elevate your life. I'm telling you, there's so many different things in this book, so many different gems, so much value in this book that's going to help you take your life to the next level. So make sure you guys purchase a copy. Before we wrap up, I have a few more questions for you, Dean. You talk about legacy. How do you personally define that word in your life right now?
Well, the older you get, the closer you get to needing a legacy, because it's what's left after you leave. And so the point is how do you want to be remembered? And I think I want to be remembered going back to those basics traits. I see the traits you develop as a kid is who you are now. And if you use those traits, I say at least 4. So punctual, organized, determined, and disciplined. If you're building a house and you have a block under each corner of that house, your foundation is strong. If you don't have at least 4, then you got a little bit of a house that might not hold up in tough times. And so the legacy is who you are and what you did with it. A lot of people have talent, but they never get it out. And I think when people read the book and they see how I started and some of the things that happened to me in life that could have turned me into a victim instead of a victor, and how those games helped me to get through tough, I always think, well, this is crappy stuff, but this is the 13th inning. You got 4 more to go. You can get through this. And it happens all the time lately with all the things we've been doing, but it's that keeps you together. So the legacy is saying, yeah, he had these strong personality traits. He was very outgoing. He was very committed to the things he believed in. His coaching proves that they were winning formulas, an 89% overall win-loss record in all the sports I coach with football, basketball, and baseball. That's Mr. Ross calculated that over 10 years, and I put together my own on top. So it's 89%, no matter what sport it was the win-loss record. And everything I did as a 7th grade A football coach my first year, how I put that team together, I never coached a football team. I'd only played a couple of years of football because I got a concussion, had to quit. But it's the same fundamentals. Practicing is the same fundamentals, having a game plan, executing, and then revising your game plan. And that's what I did in life. So that's what my legacy should be, is who I was then, is what I was back when I was growing up, and I stayed with it all the way through. And that's exactly the same things I built my business on, not any wild theories of business professors in college who have never run a business or signed a check. I personally signed every check every month. We paid once a month in my clubs, 450 checks a month. I signed personally. I didn't have them stamped. And if it was a really big bonus check type thing, I would hand deliver it to the person and say, congratulations. I hope I do this every month. And that goes a long way. So the legacy is, did you walk your talk? And I think in most of the things I did, compared to where I was and where I am, I think that's the legacy. It's the reputation, but more than that, it's the results you got. It's all about results, not performance.
That's good. That's good. So how do you connect with the next generation, especially in a world that's changed so drastically, much since playing in your days?
I run into that a lot. And so if I run into a kid, I'll find something to say that gets them to respond to me. And then the most important thing you need to do with these kids, because they have a hard time doing it, is make eye contact. Get them to make eye contact and feel that you're making eye contact and they don't want to break it but it might be uncomfortable for them. And when they're looking you in the eye and you're saying something positive, find something positive to say first. And the more that you can get them, which means you have to listen. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So what we should be doing is listening twice as much as we really do. And not just hearing, but listening. What did they really say? Letting it absorb and then sending something back. But I like this thing when you send something back, it's best to do it in an elevator speech, 15-second type thing. So get them to talk. The more they talk, the more they understand you're listening, the more that means you must care about me. Most people don't. And that's all it takes. Kids are really easy to win over if you just do a few simple things. And one of them is take time, give them attention, and listen.
That's so good.
And that's what coaching is. And that's why I think I was a good coach. I was hard on kids, and the kids will tell you that. I'll have 60 kids that I coach that still contact me now, and that was 50 years ago, daily. And they buy the book, and I make sure I mention probably 80 of them in the book. And they think that's great because they know I haven't forgot them. But they'll talk to me, Coach, you know when you used to do this? Yeah, I hated that. But now I know why. Well, when you're 63 years old, you know why. And I say, and when my kid did that, I said, what did Coach Wallace do? This is what he did, and that's what I'm doing. He said, most of them say, I raised my kids the way you coached me, and that's why they turned out good. And that's legacy too. But that's how I find, if I want to have the time to make contact with a kid, which I enjoy doing, that's a technique I would use. Because even though it wasn't something I got, it's something I learned to give. And when I got through writing this book, I thought, well, why didn't my parents ever say, I love you? Why didn't my parents ever kiss me? They didn't do that back then. Why didn't my parents ever come to one practice or one game in football, basketball, baseball when I played until I was playing professional baseball? Never. And I saw other kids doing that. And I think, well, why is Dennis Moss's dad there? And why is this guy, they're always here. Mine's not. Well, I could have dwelled on that. So what? My dad's not playing the game. I am. It's my heart and my determination that all that rise above the rest. And it did. All of those. None of them did what I've done. And so my parents, when I got to the end of the book, I thought, well, you know what? My parents never got any of that. My parents had basically a very weird, unfortunate lives with their brothers being killed in accidents or tree things, accidents. And then my mother lost her first child at birth. And it's just amazing things they had. Yet they kept a house together and a place for my brother and I to sleep and eat dinner and stuff. And where you get to realize the reward because you work through it. Parents sometimes fail us, but I don't think they do it on purpose. Some get to a spot where they can't help themselves and they don't care and they can't change it anyway. But rise above it. If you can find one person that cares about you, you can use them as a crutch to rise above it. And then pretty soon you're on your own.
So good. That's so good. So what role does family and faith play in your approach to mentorship and leadership?
Well, my family, which I would consider from the time I was married and had my own children, I raised them, my wife and I raised them completely different than we'd ever been raised. And so somehow even though we never talked about it, we realized that we have the opportunity to do something different. And in our opinion, it's better. So I was at work earning and providing for my family, and my wife was at work being there when the kids got home and taking them to shop or do this and that together, or be there if someone needs to go up to school. They forgot something or this and that. So that's how we did it. And that's fortunately we lived in a time where everyone wasn't trying to get ahead of the others and struggle for how do I do all this and then get upset themselves. So family plays an important role because they supported things I did. And I gave them a good home, and my wife supported the things I did because she knew how it was much better than we ever had. And so I think that's important. In faith, my grandmother is the one who really got me started. She came over from Finland by herself at age 18 on a tanker and migrated to the West Coast. She didn't speak any English, but when she got here, she put away her Finnish flag and she learned English, and she had an American flag, and she had the biggest 4th of July parties because she was here. Now she wanted to be American. And when Finnish people were here, or when they'd write letters, they'd write in Finnish and speak in Finnish, but she wasn't trying to change us into Finland. And so, but she believed very much. She was a Lutheran. I have a Bible from her, to the point where by the time I was 5, I was baptized in the Lutheran church. I was in the kids' choir. I was an acolyte, lighting candles. By 13, I was confirmed in a Lutheran church. So those are all the things you have to go through to be, quote, at first communion, which was about 14. And I did all that. It was because my grandmother and my mother and I would always go to church on Sunday mornings. My dad didn't, but, he went, like a lot of people could, or any one of those times like that. But faith, I'm a convinced Christian. I try to meditate every day. I have words of wisdom, spiritual words of wisdom and all that. And so lately I haven't been as good as I normally was. I read the Bible in a year type stuff. So it's very important because, and I have these discussions with my grandson, whose dad is Swedish, and they're not exactly into that Christianity concept in that particular case, but we talk about that kind of stuff. And I say, you have to have a leap of faith to start, but if you don't believe in that, what do you believe in? There's nothing after that. So it's been very important to me, knowing that we're sinners and we have to ask for forgiveness, but to always try to do better, not just get by, get better every day, no matter what it is.
So good. I have this philosophy: getting better by 1% every day.
Routines.
Yes, compounding those small wins, and really embracing the process. I feel like so many times people, even I've gotten caught up in focusing on the end result, where it's like it drives me crazy. But once I start to like really become conscious of embracing the process, I enjoy the ride. But man, listen, guys, I'm enjoying this. I've enjoyed this episode so far. What do you hope readers take away from this book, From Baseball to Business?
Well, first of all, I hope they'll read it and pass it around, because I think it can be used as a cookbook for anything you want to do, raising your family, getting into sports as a kid. And I wrote the book, so I know what's in it, and I know what it took to write the book, to have that to offer. If I was a parent, even if I was a former athlete myself, they have some answers, but sometimes there's better answers than they had, or they might have done better than they did in their mind. So if I was a parent raising a child or an athlete or both, and if I was wanting to get into business, I would read this book, because it's fundamentals, and they're fundamentals that are all purpose. My way of reverse engineering, seeing where I want to be and then working backward. Well, if I'm going to get to the finals, I have to win these games. If I'm going to win these games, I have to win these games. If I'm going to do there, I have to. If it's the first day of practice and we got 3 weeks to prepare for our first 7th grade A football game, what do I need to do on day one? Well, these kids have never put on uniforms before, so I've got to get them into uniforms, how they get into them and out to the field to do exercise. That might be right there, all you can do in day one with the time you have. And so day 2, we're going to do that, and then we're going to do a little bit more. And day 3, we're going to get out here in the field in 15 minutes, and we're going to be able to do all this stuff, because we got 12 days to get practice in. And by practice, we're going to be in a football game. There's going to be kickoffs, there's going to be punts, there's going to be returns, there's going to be defense, there's going to be offense, there's going to be plays. There, all these things. Well, how do you get all those things in 12 days? So I would start with, what do we need to have covered at least by then? And which of these things will we be able to take the least time practicing? Well, kickoff, let's say. But we need to learn how to block and tackle and run a few plays. So I'd work backwards. And that was the most amazing sport I coach, even though, it wasn't my best one. We still had great results because by the time those kids start on day one till the final game of the season, it was like they they look like professionals. And to see that progress in basically 12 and then 7 games, so that's 7 weeks, basically about an 8, 9 week program, to see that growth was amazing. It was so fulfilling for me as a coach. So I always reversed engineered whatever it was from the club back to my training to get ready for the season, all nuts. So I just think it's a recipe for everything. It can be applied to your relationship, to raising your kids, to helping them get through sports, to starting a business. I went down to that club system losing, they were doing 450,000 a year, losing about 125,000. When I finally took that job, I walked into my office on a Saturday morning. No one was there except a few people playing racquetball and a guy who was watching TV at the reception desk. And I went up my office and opened. It was one desk, 2 chairs, nothing on the walls, nothing in the drawers. And one of the former owners had actually been the manager they replaced with me. And I thought, well, that's crazy. They don't have any plans or any vision, or there's no stuff here to. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was a clean slate. There was no expectation set. I didn't want someone to tell me how to run the business anyway. And I told him, I said, if you want a puppet, I'm not the one. If you hire me, you have to get out of the way. I'll throw the pitches I want back to the immaculate inning. So that's how I ran it. And we went and I put graphs in a book to show that. A couple of graphs show 22 years of growth. It's just textbook, Samuelson Economics. And I never took a business course again. It's all from what I learned in sports and how I got to perfect it with coaching and with playing and with raising a family. So I'll guarantee you this book covers it if you want to apply the principle to your situation. I'm very proud of it, actually, of the way it flowed together.
I can definitely see it. I can definitely see it. I'm looking forward to reading it as well. So before we wrap up, Dean, what's next? I know it might sound premature, but what's next for Dean? I know you just wrote this book, but is there anything else in the works?
Well, no, I think I'd like to, if I was on that board for 10 years. Our Boys and Girls Club, we got a new one built during my time, opened. During a 4-year span, we had 2 kids from our club, the Boys and Girls Club National Youth of the Year, 1 out of 10,000 applicants. Twice that happened in a 4-year period. And then in 1996, I think it was, that Boys and Girls Club was voted the best Boys and Girls Club in the United States. And so it's a very successful club. We even have dental opportunities there so I like to take the books and go around and talk to kids or kids and parents there. And I want to go to little leagues, like our Summerlin Little League was the United States champion this year with Summerlin, Henderson, Las Vegas Little League. There's some good programs, and go around and talk to parent coaches, kids, players groups. I could say a big one, and talk about what it is to be a player, what it is to be a coach, what it is to be a supportive parent without being a helicopter, and how coaches should look at their responsibility. I could do breakout sessions for coaches clinics. I could do pep talk session for the kids that play, how they should look at it. Don't give up. Don't be a victim. Be a victor. What is it you didn't do right that you can rise above? How do you put together the game plan that helps you get better in that area? Keep doing it, because even when you're through baseball, this stuff will help you in life like it has me. And remember, I never knew he was watching, but that's how it started. And he's a big part. I call him my mentor, founder, and main influencer. And his picture and his son, Al passed away just over a year ago, maybe 2 now. Wow. And his son wrote a page and a half. I asked him to write a tribute to his dad on a testimony for me. And what he wrote is amazing. He talks about how his dad had always talked about me, and then how his dad always said he's going to hire that guy someday. And then how afterwards we kept in contact for 30 or 40 years. Don said, I don't know if there's ever a time when I'd call my dad. He called him every day because, this is father, elderly. And he said, I don't think there was one conversation where he didn't bring up your name.
Wow.
And that's the guy who I didn't know was watching. So I'd ask people, do you know who's watching you now? Are you aware? Is anyone? Probably you wouldn't know, but you never know how it could change your life. So you better be your best, even when when you don't know anyone's looking.
So good.
Just be that man in the mirror. Go read the poem, The Man in the Mirror, or I call it The Person in the Mirror, because the girl can look in the mirror. It's by Winslow. It's an amazing poem, and it's the same thing. You never know who's watching.
Absolutely.
And then when you get that chance, that fork in the road, when you get that ball put in your hand, like I did my junior year in high school, I asked the one question, the coach said, yes. That changed my whole life. I got a scholarship out of it. And it kept me from going to Vietnam because I'd never gone to college because my parents didn't have the money.
Got it. Got it. So how can people stay connected with you, and how can they purchase this book? Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah. Well, the book is now, it's been out on Amazon.com. You can go to Amazon.com and put in the search bar From Baseball to Business, A Legacy of Leadership. I don't even know if you have to put that in. And it'll come up and it'll be a picture that this is the book. I don't know where.
If you back it up, okay, they can see a little bit there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get them in a couple of days. And usually, I found out these are not published or printed up in one spot. They have their own printing places all over the country. This one, when I came to my house, because I bought some Christmas presents, it said printed in Las Vegas. I couldn't believe it was printed right here in town. But it's also on Barnes and Nobles now. So
awesome. Awesome. So we'll make sure we also, again, guys, we'll have the direct link to Dean's book in the description below. So you can actually just click on the link and it will take you right there to get a copy of it. I'm not a Kindle guy, but if you're working out and you want to get a Kindle and you can put the headphones on and listen to it, audio book, whatever, just get the book. I promise you guys will not regret it. Any closing remarks, anything that you want to leave the viewers, any piece of advice where less than 25 days remaining of 2025? What is some advice?
I got one. It comes up all the time. I hope I remember. I don't think I've said it for a year or two. And it's from my favorite coach, Johnny Wooden. I got to talk to him for breakfast one morning, just one-on-one. I've listened to him in coaches' clinics and things. I read all his books. I put his stuff up in my basketball team's locker rooms that I always had. Let's see. And I had it done into a big calligraphy thing, and it was framed. It was over the entry-exit doors of Floyd Light Middle School where I was. So when you left, it was called Remember This. Remember this your lifetime through. Tomorrow there will be more to do. And failure waits for those who stay. With some success made yesterday, tomorrow you must try once more, and even harder than before.
There you have it. I love it. I love it. Listen,
I didn't know you were going to ask that question, but knowing that poem sure helped.
it definitely did. It definitely did. Well, listen, we truly appreciate you so much, man, for taking the time out to, just share your knowledge, your expertise, and promote this beautiful book, this beautiful blueprint. I know it's going to transform so many people's lives, not just individuals, but families, marriages, even the youth. So we appreciate you guys. Listen, this episode will be released on the 19th of December. So make sure you subscribe, you hit the notification button so you can get the notification once this episode releases. Again, guys, we truly appreciate you guys. 2025 has been a great year. 2026 is going to be even a dynamic year for so many people. And we thank you guys, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.